A very good afternoon, everyone. We are proud to present the fifth edition of Video Next Asia. Video Next Asia Week, an e-conference that looks to capture the ongoings in the online video industry through conversations and discussions with top names of the business. To begin with, I would like to thank our sponsors, presenting partner Woot, associate partners Pubmatic, Viduli, and Z5, and insights partner NEPA for their support. Now introducing you to the moderator of the session, Anirban Roy Chaudhary, Associate Editor, eFacts. Once again, thank you everyone for joining. Over to you, Anirban.
Thank you very much, Debashish. So as the session is named OTT Business Trends in 2021, we will look into business trends and we'll look into 2021. Of course, 2020 has been a year that taught us that trends are not something that we should be discussing too much, because it quite changed the projections a lot. I have a great panel here. I'll not waste much time in introductions, but Satya Raghavan from YouTube, Manish Kalra from Z5, Zubin Dubas from Shimaru, and Hargunit Singh from Pubmatic. Welcome, everyone. Starting with you, Satya, when I say OTT business trends of 2021, tell me quickly the top 5 things that come to your mind whenever we discuss this. First, when we discuss 2021, and then we are talking about OTT business trends.
Yeah, no, thanks, and always a pleasure to be interacting with you, Anirban. So I think in terms of trends, really, right, the big Uber message that I see looming in front of us is really the opportunity that 2021 has for all of us, right? That goes without saying. From a 2020 point of view, I have a feeling that OTTs and various other video platforms and other digital platforms had a very interesting year because it was very transformative in nature. A whole lot of people obviously were at home and they were trying to figure out how to express themselves or how to get more information or how to entertain themselves, and obviously a lot of that benefited in good viewership tailwinds for a lot of us all through 2020. And a lot of that behavioral change will actually continue into 2021. And not to say that other mediums will not come back. Of course they will. India is too vast a country in that sense. But really some of these tailwinds will carry into 2021. So it really tells you that, look, as businesses are coming online, as consumers are rethinking how they can now spend money, there is just opportunity for all of us, right? And I think opportunity manifests itself along many vectors. There's obviously one that is very important, which is that of viewership growth. And as we get into 2021 and as we think of the next few years, the opportunity is to keep going deeper and deeper into India, to keep going across town classes, to keep getting into different consumer segments and really capitalize on viewership growth there. Next most important obviously is, how do we grow in terms of revenues while all of that is happening? Anecdotally, we all say that, revenue follows growth in viewership. So it's incumbent on all of us to see how that can happen. As also opportunities to, open up different diverse revenue streams. It was very difficult for all of us to think about entertainment being paid for in the digital sense a few years ago, but a lot of that has changed, right? So how do we capitalize on newer revenue streams in that sense? But most importantly, I think, helpfulness is something that we should all think a lot about. As more and more people spend time online, their use cases will move from not just entertainment, but also information and learning, as we are seeing on YouTube at this point of time. So how do we continue to be helpful? There are very few places that people can go for information that is easily available. So how do we over-index on that? There are challenges in the learning space. So how can we contribute to that? So I think broadly, viewership, revenues, helpfulness are all things that we will see trends emerge there that we can all kind of take cognizance of.
Great. Manish, continuing from there, tell me what comes to your mind when I say this 20 OTT business trend, especially from Z5's lenses.
Sure. Hey, thanks everyone for making this happen. From our perspective, I think consumers evolving. They are enjoying their entertainment online. The behavior has changed. Kind of pandemic has been a shot in the arm for all of us, which brought in more and more users online. So we see the growth to continue. We see more and more users coming in from deeper parts of the country on OTT platforms like ourselves, which would be more tier 2, 3 city penetration going up. Definitely, there would be growth in vernacular content because that's where, and that's what consumer trends tell us, and a lot of research is that Indians like to consume content in their native languages. So if I'm a Tamilian, I want to watch a Tamil series, and so does a Telugu guy. So that's going to happen more and more often. Better quality, better bandwidth would include that, hey, the experience of the user increases. It improves significantly. While we do feel that there are parts of the country which are not so good on the bandwidth. So that should improve with 4G, 5G penetration coming in. And I think last but not the least, more and more focus on quality would come in. Quality of content, very important. I think 2020 in a hurry to acquire brought in a lot of quantity and all kind of stuff online on OTTs. So we do believe that, hey, consumers evolved and they want a lot. They want choices, but they want good choices to make. So quality would be a key agenda for us. And considering the recent guidelines issued by Ministry of Broadcast, we would obviously want to focus more on quality and family entertainment so that more and more people can enjoy it on their big screens, sitting with the family and kind of bringing the right kind of entertainment. So yeah, like I said, consumers evolving and so are we, and that's how the trends will emerge.
Correct. That's what OTT has always promised to be, something for everybody instead of being the one thing for everyone. Hargunit, how do you see this space then when we are talking about something for everybody? There are different cohorts for you to deliver. So as an EdTech network, how do you see this space?
Thanks, Anirban. So from a monetization or a technology perspective from programmatic advertising, I think one thing that we see will happen in 2021 for sure is the header bidding as a technology that will come in, because header bidding will it'll actually cut across a lot of the points that the audience mentioned here, the panel mentioned here, in terms of it enables a lot more bang for the buck for the publishers, for the content creators. It also gives a better user experience to the actual end users. Now, whether they are on, whether it's on a mobile device, whether it's on a large TV, whether it's across on a Wi-Fi network, or even on 2G, 3G, 4G, because a lot of this technology resides on server-side technology. So the experience end-to-end is better. Even from a user perspective, latency is lesser, more control over ad pods for the publisher, which means better viewability for the advertisers, as well as better experience overall for the user, the end user as such. So I think that will work across all the different segments on the publisher side, the advertiser side, and the user side as well in 21 for sure.
Okay, that's great. Zubin Shimarumi just completed 2 years, and congratulations for the second birthday. But tell me something. What's been the lesson in 2020? And I ask you this question specifically because being a new platform, you had not probably planned such scale or such viewership that you witnessed last year. So and from that point of view, how do you see it 2021?
So the way I look at it was that if I break it up into 3 different phases in the OTT space, so till pre-2019, we had the entire era of trials. So everyone were trying out what OTT is, and they were trying to get kind of change of habit from catch up from TV to catch up TV, and that was probably the trigger point of at least trying out OTTs. 2020 became a habit for most people, and that was probably the year of habit and habituating, because there was no choice. The pandemic actually got them all in there, and being at home and still wanting one-on-one content and entertainment, customers got to OTT and they had no choice, but they had to kind of get onto it and use it, and they got habituated to get some great content. Okay. 2021, the way I look at it, is the year of addiction. And that's where they are going to actually get into, they can't do without it, and which is why they'll start paying for it. And that's where SVOD comes in. So while, of course, there's going to be a bounty of AVOD revenue coming in, and the likes of YouTube and us, thankfully, as well on the YouTube side, we will definitely make a lot of monetization happen. On the OTT SVOD side, I also see that that's going to be a year of serious subscriptions coming in from the B2C side. Having said that, there's also another angle, which is B2B. And that's what we've really carved a niche out in the last couple of years now, where we've actually intentionally played the B2B2C game as an OTT player. So you'll see us appearing on OTTs or on services of another partner who has customers. And that was where we saw monetization happening far better than going B2C at that stage.
Correct.
And we've made about 50 odd partnerships within the industry across segments, which is right from BFSI to e-commerce to travel to ISPs. And we're seeing a lot of traction out there as well. So that's as far as monetization goes. And like, of course, both Manish and Satya touched upon, I think regional is the way to go. There's definitely a lot of scope for regional to expand, because OTT is now going beyond the tier 1 and the tier 2. So people want content in their own languages, and they'll be more loyal to content in their own languages. They'll even pay for it out there. Last point I think we need to touch upon is customers are getting choosy because there's tons of choice. It is a buyer's market, and experience plays a huge role in that. So whether it's in-app or outside app, or how do you delight customers, I think that is the key to winning this entire OTT game, at least going forward. That's my summary for now.
That's great. That's a great summary. Satya, I'll come to you. But before that, to all the participants, please key in your questions. You can just, there's a chat box, you can type it there, and I'll ask the person who is asking the question to. Satya, when we talk about habit forming, I mean, YouTube has been at it in India for a long period of time, for a fair bit, a good number of people. Do you see, because of this penetration deeper into India, newer habits or newer creators coming out? Maybe earlier it would be only urban creators creating most of the content and being consumed elsewhere. Now, do you see the creation part also coming in from other, say, what is not the metros or the mini metros?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely seeing that, right? So if you actually dive a little deeper into YouTube, think of YouTube as a grid where on one side you have, different verticals of content or different genres of content. And on the other side, you have, different languages, right? If you just look at just that two-dimensional axis, right? Till about 4, 5, maybe almost 7, 8 years ago, most of the content would come, for TV or food or comedy, that kind of content, and it would mainly come from, metros and it would mainly happen in languages like Hindi and English, right? Sure. But as internet penetration started to grow, way back in 2015, we saw South India really come alive along all the vectors on this axis. So today, if you actually go and look at the South Indian market and compare it to what it was in 2014 and 2015, in 2014, 2015, some of the early shoots were mainly in the area of comedy, right? But if you look at South Indian content right now, whether it is in any of the South Indian languages, you'll see that there are as many learning creators who are teaching people on how to learn something to do with school or something to do with higher education as there are in any of those languages, right? So as each year passes by, the depth of creators by vertical and by languages keeps on increasing, right? If you look at what happened then post the entire geo boom in 2016 and 2017, you suddenly saw North India come back, but not just in Hindi, but in various different dialects and various different North Indian languages, they started to come back, right? Some of the principal languages in the north, like Punjabi, or from the east, like Bengali, they started to shine, and they have had a similar growth in terms of depth in content verticals. So you have, people who are talking about beauty in Bengali, or people who are obviously doing music in Punjabi, right? And now as we speak, right, as we are, as internet penetration touches the 500 million, 600 million mark, we're also seeing some of the other smaller Indian languages really shine, whether it is Ladakhi or whether it is the languages from the northeast of India. So at this point of time, what at least we are seeing on YouTube is that, multiple use cases are emerging for, digital media in that sense. It's not just about, okay, if there's a TV station in Hindi, there will be television content on OTT, right? It's about saying that, look, there are people in the northeast of India who want to know how to prepare a certain recipe in food. And hence, they will watch content in a lot of languages. But that will then inspire someone from there saying that, look, let me do it in the language that I am comfortable with, and that my people staying in my area are comfortable with. So that's the process through which inspiration grows creators in different languages. And we are looking forward to the time when literally every Indian language, and we know that there are so many dialects in India, literally in every Indian language we see all of these happen, right? And that's why digital is so important, because it'll be very difficult for traditional media to think about how to satisfy someone in Assamese, right, in that sense. Yeah. But obviously it's incumbent on a whole lot of digital platforms to think about that opportunity and then figure out what is then the best business model that will make sense.
Okay, thanks. Very nicely put. There's a question from Dr. Joyita Chatterjee. Manish, since you touched on that point, I think she has asked this question. With the government proposing regulations of OTT content, how do you see the future of OTT market? Since you have already mentioned about the regulations, why don't you take it?
No, I think it's a good move, I would say. It gives a level playing field to all. And from a consumer perspective, it's also kind of gives you guidelines, what can be watched when, where, and with whom. So we are all adapting. We, anyways, irrespective of government guidelines, we were working on a self-regulatory body in a similar zone. And I think government has got the pulse of the market. So we completely aligned to that and will comply. And like I initially said, future would see more of family content, less of edgy content, which OTT dominated with. But I think overall, all of us are willing to kind of move in a direction that is more consumer friendly, and it's a good move from the government, I would say.
Great. There was Samir Nair used to say this: there is a world from Nagin to Narcos, and let us have some content for everybody. The ones who like Nagin, also the ones who like Narcos. So I hope this answers the question of Dr. Joyita. Harguni, coming back to you, as we talk about going deeper into India, and we are talking about various dialects, I'm sure there would be regional publications also that you deal with. Tell me something, is there enough education about field rates and about programmatic advertising in those markets?
Sure. So programmatic advertising or digital advertising in general, I think has come a long way. I've been in this industry for about 13 odd years from different organizations. From a monetization perspective, local language invariably had a lower CPM or a lower price point. And digital advertising and programmatic was always considered to be the easy way to get access to cheaper inventory. I think those times have changed. And in the last few years, the rest of the folks mentioned, in the post-Jio era, since a lot of users are now coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities, that has slowly but steadily changed, simply because if you look at it from a video, I think OTT and video has driven a lot of that, because when FMCG advertisers want to target or want to spend money, a lot of that actually goes to video content, which spreads across different sectors. So slowly but steadily, even local language content creators, whether it's Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Ladakhi, like Satya mentioned, the trend is definitely changing, and we are seeing a larger uptake. The other thing that we're seeing is now a lot of smaller niche brands are starting to advertise as well. So on one end, we have the FMCG sector. On the other end, you also have a lot more local players who are coming online, and a lot of other players, in the market who are facilitating smaller businesses to come online and start reaching their audiences. So I think these two things have significantly helped. And also then there's just the sheer volume of content, whether it's print news, whether it's video content, it market finds its level in the end. So I think it's only going to get even better from here. So yeah.
Okay. Zubin, why don't you take this question? Do you believe that Bollywood industry got a great hit with the penetration of OTT, especially during the pandemic? Now, Shemaroo also distributes movies. But I ask you this question with one more question that is there later. You can answer both of them maybe together. How did this change the film business, if it at all did, or do you see it going back to what it used to be pre-COVID?
Okay, so first question is about Bollywood and what its impact was during the pandemic. Actually, we have two clear products that we've actually experimented with during the pandemic. One is something which we call a promised subscription to a service, which is Bollywood Premiere. Now that is basically promising to the customer that every Friday we'll get you a new Bollywood film. It's a movie. The movie category will be more on the themes of stories are the new stars. So you may not have star faces in the movie, but great stories, great production, great execution, and first time on digital. So this is a promise that we've been continuing to do, and we saw a lot of subscriptions come on the heels of this kind of a product offering, where we promise content to a customer at a certain frequency. So our tagline is 52 weeks, 52 premieres. So this was one on the SWOT side. The other thing that we did experiment with was actually becoming the first OTT in India to actually create a Shemaroo Me box office, which is basically first time ever on digital, even before it goes into theatrical. So the Bollywood premiere was theatrical first and then first on digital. Here it is direct release of a film on digital. And what we wanted to do is give it a very real feel to whatever we could do digitally to the actual movie going experience. So we tied up with Book My Show and actually got them sold on a ticket basis. So we did TVOD for the very first time. To be honest, TVOD is a tough model to crack because you got to have content marketing and a great product. Having said that, we released about 10 films, and it was pretty well responded by customers. As far as going forward, I see that there'll be a hybrid because every new trend creates opportunity for both worlds to exist. I don't think there'll be one or the other. It all depends on, in fact, the producers will now have more avenues to monetize, and they'll actually be able to play one up against the other. Because releasing a film is also very costly after producing it. You have to pay for print, you have to pay for advertising, you have to pay for a lot of other things in your cost of getting into a theater. And the fact is that theaters have a certain limited amount of capacity and number of films coming into the theater, even if it gets mainstream after the pandemic, is going to get a little challenging for producers to keep coming into theaters. So I see there'll be a good mix of films that go direct to OTT, which can't afford going to theaters. And at the same time, the large big budget films will come to theaters because eventually the movie going experience is more than just watching the film. It's also about the evening outing on a weekend with family. So I believe both will exist.
Great. Manish, you mentioned in your opening remarks that that 2020 was about a lot of quantity. 2021, do you think would be a year of retention, and would that be the biggest challenge for you? Hi, Manish, can you hear me?
Oh, you were asking me. Sorry, I got bummed out.
Yes, yes.
Like 10 seconds.
So you mentioned in your opening remarks that 2020 was about a lot of acquiring customers. The story was about acquiring customers. 2021, do you think the challenge would be retention?
I think retention has always been a challenge, and more so it will become a focus for all of us. Fundamentally, because like we were discussing, consumers have a lot of choices. Now they will go to one platform for one content type, and then go to second platform for another content type. And somewhere the pricing is also like that. There are trial packs everywhere, and consumers are smart. So having said it, what will drive retention will be a great consumer experience, whether it's platform experience on the app or on your connected TVs or on the website. How well is your video streaming? How much are you able to provide good quality content? I think that's where I mentioned in the entire discussion, hey, if you are able to give that right streaming experience to the user with the right content, which is high quality and in their language, you have a higher chance of retaining them. And that's what our focus would be. Obviously, the eye never goes off the ball on acquisition. That remains a priority, but ensuring that the leaky bucket is filled and there's lesser leakage by higher retention would be an important priority as well.
Yeah. You have a partnership with Alt Balaji. There's somebody who has asked a question about will there be a super app which will have all the apps under it, and there will be one subscription that you pay. Also, Tata Sky and the Airtel Extreme, they're doing something like that. But why don't you take this question? Will there be or do you think there's a need for a super app today to have all the apps like ZEE5, Netflix, Amazon, where you can pay one subscription fee and actually get to watch all the content that is there.
So we are seeing various business models here, Anirban. Obviously, consumers, various industry studies say that they're willing to wait for almost 3 platforms, not beyond that. Now, if there are aggregators emerging, like someone said, Tata Sky or even Jio set-top box, so those are like B2B models for us. They're not B2C models for us. Those guys are aggregating our content and serving it to their consumers in a different format by virtue of their platform. So that's another model which is emerging. And somewhere, I think Zubin also mentioned B2B2C is emerging. So that's how the industry is evolving. But fundamentally, if we keep our eye on the end user, whichever format or platform they are consuming your content from, we would want them to watch more of our content. We would want them to spend more time on us and have higher levels of stickiness. So yes, I think those models are more how we serve content, but from a consumer perspective, how many people watch us and align with us is more important.
Satya, a question for you. How do you see advancement of technology regarding viewers' experience in India and adaptability by customers? Is it a challenge for rural audience especially? This is by Muskan Sharma.
Hey, Anirban, I managed to follow the first part of your question, but the second part broke a bit. Can you just repeat that? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you see advancement of technology regarding viewers' experience in India and adaptability by customers? Is it a challenge for rural audience?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great question, right? We all know during the pandemic, there was so much digital consumption happening that it put a lot of strain on a bunch of networks. So at that point of time, platforms which are able to move to more of an adaptive way of serving the consumer, which is allowing the best possible service to the best in the best possible manner depending on the consumer's connection, right? I think things like that become very important in a country like India. Purely because we know that we'll have to be patient in this business. Shooting something in 4K does not necessarily mean that it will get consumed in that higher resolution, depending on the person's connection. So how do you make sure you're aware of that and you build technology that can do that, right? That's at one level, just in terms of technology. I think at the other end of the spectrum, at the top end of the spectrum, we have people now getting into many different ways of interacting with the content, right? So one has to be equally cognizant of that. There are folks who are consuming digital content on smart televisions. So is your product then optimized for that on the other end, right? So that's another axis to kind of think along. Media is also getting consumed in different forms. So there are people who want to interact with the content, gamify some of that content perhaps, or add AR and VR. So how do you then ensure those experiences as well, right? But again, the challenge that we all face is how do you marry the right technological aspect to your product with the right business model? And how do you, and that's where we come back to some of the earlier arguments saying that, okay, what business model works? I, for one, think that, we'll all have to be a little more patient. India is the kind of country where often things are generational in change in that sense, right? I mean, the old adage about the father retiring and the son making as much money in a month as the father made when he retired, or the mother made when she retired, right? Obviously, that is changing. We are moving up the curve from a per capita point of view much faster than we were earlier. But still, we all have to think about how we need to be a lot more patient, figure out how technology is an enabler, and not make technology something which is like a deterrent to consumption in that sense, right? So yeah.
That's great. Hopefully Muskan's question is answered. A part of it was for you, Hargunit, too. Do you see this adaptability of technology an issue in the rural or in the suburban markets?
So yes, in some extent, as an OTT publisher, or even from a monetization perspective, simply because of the nature of devices or the speeds at which some of the network connections may work, can be a challenge at this point in time. However, like Satya mentioned, it is a generational shift. However, I think we've already come a long way from a OTT as well as a user perspective. From a platform like ours, in such cases, what we do is we then work with publishers or OTT owners and help them understand what are the different technical challenges, limits, and how some of those things can be, mitigated. Now, whether it's ensuring that you work with advertisers on specific kinds of creatives or different creative formats and sizes, like Satya mentioned, there's no point trying to target a campaign, to a tier 4 city and having a video which is 4K. It just adds to the infrastructure load, and the experience for the end user is bad. So you can then ensure that it runs at a better rate, and it's more feasible for all the partners involved. So yes, definitely.
Okay, Manish, Kaveri has asked, maybe B2B is a good option in the initial stage, but in the long run, shouldn't B2C be the route? Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think I agree. B2B is not the most ideal situation. We just become content suppliers. We always believe that if we are able to build a direct relationship with the end consumer and give them what they're looking for, rather than having aggregators or mediators in between, that'll be the best for the business. But like I said, it's an ecosystem which is evolving and we can't shy away from it. So that's how the industry is evolving and we're participating in it. But to answer the question, B2C over B2B, yes, any day.
Zvin, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, so for me, what we've been doing on B2B is more like we've been operating like a CaaS provider, and I abbreviate that as saying content as a service or content as a solution. So when we go to any other partner, we try and understand their objectives and see how we can play a role in giving them a solution to achieve their objectives via content. And having said that, we don't disconnect from the experience. We actually embed our app into their app and things like that, and do some very interesting models. So while it's probably like a supermarket or I would say a mall experience, where Nike can have its own private store, at the same time Nike can have a store inside a mall and still have the same experience. So for us, it's retaining the same experience, but at the same time giving leverage of that particular our content to a particular industry. And if they benefit, we benefit, then we all are happy, right? So I guess that's the formula.
Okay. Satya, another question for you. Given there is a lot of quality learning content on YouTube which delivers significant value, is there a way to better / have dedicated search based on quality of learning content, and any plans to monetize it?
Yeah, I mean, at this point of time, if you actually look at the learning content ecosystem on YouTube itself, right, there's obviously a lot of it on the academic side. So if you look at it, whether it is, classic, K to 12 kind of content, we have a bunch of creators and teachers and learning institutions or edtech startups who are actually saying that, look, here's a great way to put content out there, which can reach the right consumer, which can then get monetized, using the classic, ads as a revenue stream, but also, use that as a way to get them back to your mothership, like how a lot of edtechs do, and then monetize it there, right? So there are very interesting business models that are emerging there in that sense. We ourselves have a feature called memberships that allows someone to have to give content or services only to your members who pay then on a monthly recurring basis. So you could do that on your YouTube channel as well. And beyond K-12, learning also on the academic side has a huge spectrum. It's not just higher education, but it's also competitive exams, right? You all know that we are a crazy country for competitive exams in that sense.
Yes.
So we have a lot of opportunities on that side of the spectrum. So if you're thinking about building a learning business, think about the entire spectrum on the academic side, and then think beyond that as well. Because as every new consumer comes onto the internet, we all realize that they might come from smaller cities or towns or villages where learning could be defined as skilling for them, right? They might want to get skilled in something which in a very short period. So again, you can think of creating content for them which can get monetized from by ads or through things like memberships in that sense. And you can actually go even beyond that, right? For a whole lot of us during the pandemic, I have several friends who actually learned how to play a music instrument, by watching videos on YouTube. So you also have creators who are actually creating content that can enrich you as a person, right? So think about that entire spectrum of learning. Then think about how, what you're good at, because learning, you have to be some sort of a subject matter expert or be really passionate about that space as such. So then think about, first creating content, and then think about how you can use it to monetize either directly or indirectly, right? So I think the opportunity is really vast in that entire side of things.
Okay, staying with you, Satya, another question for both you and Manish. I'll first ask you and then go to Manish with it. Is it onwards and upwards for UGC? And that's the question for you. I'll ask the OTT part to Manish.
Yeah, and I think the classic definition of UGC was someone who took someone else's content and they put it on their channel, right? But it ceases to be the case, right? At this point of time, the concept of a user as a creator is what is happening on platforms across the world, right? So gone are the days when you just put some content and that's the content, that's how you got recognized, right? Now it's so much more easier to create content, right, and actually become a creator yourself. I always say that there are three kinds of people who do really well on platforms like YouTube. One, obviously, is someone who is very talented, so they can express themselves in spaces like music or dance or what have you. The other is someone who is very passionate, in a particular field. So they could express themselves by creating content in food or beauty. And third is really what I just mentioned, which is a subject matter expert. So they are really deep into a particular area and of expertise in that sense. So the days of the user as the creator is really what is playing out on a lot of digital platforms, right? And with the popularity of short form video platforms, right, you'll see that happen even more, where it's even more easier to create content, right? It's you just pick up your phone, shoot something, put some fancy effects, and you can get your 15 seconds of fame in that sense, right? So it's all of those which are happening and really playing out on platforms at this point of time.
Okay. Manish, the second part of the question from Tejasvi, I think it's for you. Do you see the reflections of user-generated content on OTT as well?
Yeah, I think UGC, like Satya said, is the up-and-coming thing. It's actually pretty established right now. There are a lot of creators and a lot of talent in India, and Indians love to express themselves. So we realized that rather than focusing only on PGC, we also gave it a shot with the short form app, which is an app called Hippie, which rests on ZEE5. And we see a huge amount of growth coming in there in terms of time spent, video views, and creators coming on board. So I think it's the way we are equating it, it's entertainment. There's a professionally generated entertainment and there is a user-generated entertainment. And how do we kind of mix and match? For us, it became a very synergistic thing wherein we saw a lot of our creators who are already influencers on other platforms, who are TV show artists, who are our movie artists, who are original artists. They created their handles and their fan base kind of migrated. And that helped us drive scale. But yeah, different models are emerging to answer that question. And yes, it's coming in OTT as well.
Okay. You have both AVOD and SVOD on ZEE5.
Right.
A lot of advertisers, they had moved their money that was allocated for print and outdoor media as well as television last year and moved to digital, some of it to digital.
Right.
That money again will go back to those platforms. How do you see that changing the dynamics for advertising on OTT?
No, that money will not go back to offline and at the cost of challenging some of those friends there. But yeah, I think the users moved here. They're spending more and more time on OTT platforms. We give them for an advertiser, we give them a much higher targeted kind of ad serving. You can target a female who's 25 to 34. She's living in Delhi. She's on a OnePlus phone, and you can go as deep as possible. So that traditional media does not give you. And obviously, we are much more, in a way, cost efficient still versus the traditional media. So the overall digital industry is going to grow. I think there are various metrics which are talking about 20-30% year-on-year growth. And if you see internationally, digital advertising has pretty much overtaken traditional advertising in some of the evolved economies like UK, US, and India is on that path. So yes, I think as consumers stick with us, advertisers will stick with us as well.
And is there a scope for advertising on your SVOD content?
No, so we are keeping it sacrosanct. I think we have seen some of the competition bringing a hybrid thing.
Yeah.
For us, if the user's paid for a subscription and wants a ad-free experience, we will give it to her, and we'll ensure that you're not kind of getting a mix and match of things. However, on live TV, where there are ads which are served by the broadcaster, that would kind of keep showing, but not on the original content.
Okay. Okay. We are at the last phase of this discussion. Hargunit, what do you see the challenges in front of you when we talk about 2021?
Sure. In terms of challenges, I think for OTTs, there's going to be a lot of competition when it comes to driving or getting access to a lot more spends. So I do agree with Manish in the sense that the monies that came to digital will stay in digital, a lot of it. But then the competition for OTTs will increase significantly. One, simply because I think per a Boston Global BGC report, there are some 32 plus OTTs in India as of 2020. And there's so many of these, UGC content creators, whether it's short form video. There are multiple apps right now, whether it's HiFi, like Manish said, there's Chingari, there's a whole bunch of them. So there will be a lot more competition between the pure play OTTs as well as some of these short form content, because the monies are in some ways finite. So I think that will happen. But there are other ways that partners and publishers can look at making more revenues across the spectrum.
Okay. Zubin, can animation be a part of the offering? I'll ask you to Manish as well. Where do you see animation movies or animation content fitting into the scape of OTT?
Good question. I probably didn't cover it, but yeah, we are a multi-genre, multi-regional content OTT platform, and kids is a very important part of it from an animation point of view. We have ventured into many animation IPs. One of them is Bal Ganesh, the popular one. We've got many seasons of the entire franchise up on the platform, and we are seeing a lot of traction on that. And close on heels of that, we also we are evaluating what more we can do with the kids space. It is a need for sure, and how we can kind of capitalize on the tailwind so far is what we are looking at right now.
Okay, Manish, with Indians getting access to Japanese and Korean tunes, do you think it will become a challenge for you now to if it is a fight for time and you all are battling for the same person's certain time, will it become a challenge for you to have good animation content?
I'll tell you again, thinking like consumer, if there's anime and which is popular in Japan and Korea, we will get it dubbed in Indian languages and bring it to India. So that my consumer can consume it in a way that, hey, that entertains them. They're able to understand and connect with it. So that's going to happen. Obviously, we, like I said, thinking from consumer perspective, there's a need for a quality content in a certain format, whether it's kids animation or anime, which is all across age groups. We'll bring it for the Indian user, and we want to ensure that our users stay with us and we're able to retain them. Like I said, so important to think like consumer.
But commissioning, anime content, is it there in your lens? No.
Say it again. Commissioning anime content. Yeah,
yeah,
not right now, unless we get some good quality creators providing us great animation content. I think that'll be an important one. But I think it's a function of, in kids, we have seen that happen. Like Zubin said, whether it's Choda Bheem or Bal Ganesha, we have a very, I think we were pleasantly surprised. There's something called Bandbud Budbak, which is a Hindi animation series done by a local person in Mumbai, which is doing pretty well on our platform. So yes, in kids, we have seen that evolve, and we'll keep commissioning more of that. But anime is what I was which is more experimental right now for India.
Satya, how do you see anime from YouTube lenses, and especially when you have something like Chuchu TV, which is one of the biggest channels in the world, and it's from South India, and it's mostly anime content.
Yeah, no, I mean, we should also think about it from both an import and export lens, right? So you have exactly, folks that you mentioned, like, Chuchu TV or CBS or many other such partners who are creating content based in India, for the world to consume, right?
Yeah.
So when they create something, they're creating it in many, many languages, right? And then finding out what is the right platform or the right business model for them to take part. And then there is the entire import opportunity, right? So we are also seeing a lot of our anime partners from Japan actually finding consumption in India. There's content from all over the world which gets consumed in India, whether it is for pre-K or whether it is for slightly older kids or even adults in that sense. So we should think about both the opportunity from an import and an export point of view, and figure out what is then the best business model.
Yeah. Okay, Manish, last question from the audience. I'll take it from Vanita Kohli Khandekar. She's asking, why do you always look at animation from the kids' point of view? Why do we always consider it as a kids' content? There are certain movies like Toy Story or Finding Nemo, they cut across. So, do you agree, or where do you stand with it?
No. In fact, that's what I started by saying. Kids content animation from India, we are seeing good traction. But international content, which is targeting adults and teenagers, which is anime or regular animation produced by Disney, I think if we get some good content in India as well, we would definitely latch onto it. But we'll keep leveraging the import, like Satya mentioned, from across the world.
Okay. Satya, last question, and then that we will end. We see YouTube having a YouTube space in Bombay, and since we talked a lot about regional space and it going to the deeper part of India, will you gradually start expanding those resources like YouTube space or even something like FanFest that you do to other parts of the country to maybe inspire more creators?
Yeah, we are forever trying to figure out, what is the best way of reaching out to all of these creators, right? So if you look at the way, we work at YouTube, it's not just us, but, we have a whole lot of partners who are, now from various parts of the country. I earlier talked to you about how, South India grew and then some of the other principal languages. And now literally, the language of YouTube is your mother tongue in that sense. So our first set of partners are really a lot of our enterprise partners who are based in different parts of the country, who are actually encouraging people to think about creating on YouTube and then even beyond in that sense. So that happens literally on a daily basis at this point of time. We've also done interesting models like pop-up spaces in some of these cities where we've descended in a particular city and encourage creators out there to improve their production values. Of course, that was pre-pandemic. At this point of time, we are thinking of we are actually on a daily basis delivering scaled workshops, be it across production, be it across content ideas, or be it across running a channel and how to do that better. We're doing that in so many Indian languages on a daily basis at this point of time. You just have to follow our creator handle and you'll see a lot of these being advertised out there in that sense. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, consumer is queen, consumer is king in that sense, right? So we have to think about how best to help that consumer, how best to help that consumer think about becoming a creator, and then how best to help that creator then maximize their potential, whether it is import, whether it is export, whether it is all those business models that we talked about, right from advertising to subscription to memberships to even transactions. So that is really put this entire space summed up in a neat visual that my hands could kind of conjure. But really, yeah, that's really what all of us are doing, day in and day out.
Thank you very much, Satya. Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Zubin. Thank you, Algunit. And thanks to all the participants who took part. I had more than 40 questions. I'm sorry I could not take all of them, but I tried to get most of them answered. Thanks a lot for being part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.